Oi, black people. Yeah, you. I was wondering if I could have your attention. I need your help. It's a bit awkward, and I don't like to ask, but or rather we being those of us that like to be able to speak our minds, we're wondering if you'd like to join us in calling for the release of Tommy Robinson. I know. I'm guessing that some of you might be a touch uncomfortable with that, considering the lad has a bit of reputation. Others might be, yeah, alright. Some of you, no doubt, will be thinking as you spit out your cornflakes, are you fucking kidding? He's probably not on your Christmas card list. But maybe he should be. Because that reputation is just that. It's reputation. A reputation foisted on him by the mainstream media. You remember what they all called him? Remember? The violent racist thug. Well, I'm certainly not in the business of being on the side of violent racist thugs. Because I've always hated racists. Before it became fashionable even. Before anyone was even telling me not to be racist. I remember as a child hearing the grown-ups say racist things. And even then, it made me sad. I kind of wanted to tell them off. I didn't, of course, since I was a child. But even then, I knew it was wrong. And I know it's wrong now. My opinion, my knowledge in fact, since it is far stronger than an opinion, has shifted not one iota in over 40 years. So I wouldn't be asking you to do something you felt was wrong, but I have to conclude that Tommy Robinson is not racist. I keep searching for some evidence to the contrary. I haven't found any yet. If you can find some, please let me know. There's a fair amount of evidence that he's anti-Muslim, but I don't think he'd deny that. He says, I think that he's anti-Islam and not anti-Muslim. Now that's a moot point, but Islam is not a race, and you get Muslims of all shades and colours. Islam, it is said, is a religion. But what is a religion, other than the set of ideas? They may be deeply held ideas, so deep in fact that we call them beliefs. But they remain ideas, and as such, are fair game for criticism. Criticising Islam is not racism. You, as people of colour, must know what racism, what it is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it smells, what it stinks like. You should know better than me, and your parents will know better than you, and your grandparents better still. Maybe they've told you stories of being called nigger and packy to their faces. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they've tried to shield you from that in the hope that things will get better. Maybe they chose not to tell of those times when they had to swallow their pride, and to continue to absorb the devastating unfairness and the sheer inhumanity of it, and probably all for your sake. Like I say, probably in the hope that things will get better. And they have. Haven't they? I know we're not there yet, but I think we've done pretty well considering. Just find another country that's done as well. And I have to say, that most of the reason they've got better, most of it, is because of the behaviour of you guys and your parents and grandparents, and not because of us, the white people. Some of it is. Sure, some of it is, but most of it has come from your side of the fence. Because, and this is just a feeling, I've no evidence to support this, but it feels as if you have, well, you've kind of forgiven us, at least mostly. Like I say, it's just a feeling. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But we're rubbing along now. We're rubbing along okay now, aren't we? Britain is a country of immigrants. It always has been. And Britain is nothing if not flexible. And it's this flexibility that enables it to absorb new people and to absorb their cultures without those cultures endangering the host culture. Danes, Norsemen, Saxons, Normans, well, maybe not Normans, Dutch, French Huguenots, Jews, Chinese, Maltese, West Indians, Indian Hindus, Indian Sikhs, Sri Lankans, Cypriots, Poles, Bulgarians, Romanians, West Africans, South Africans, and even normal moderate Muslims from Bangladesh and Pakistan. They all came here, mostly voluntarily, brought a piece of their own lands with them, but settled and made the compromises necessary to get on with the natives, and made our home theirs too. And that's wonderful. But now something else is happening. An aggressive and violently aggressive culture is trying to stage a takeover, and they're trying to turn it into a racial thing in order to recruit you, or at least to have you stand aside. Non-whites versus whites. It's as basic and as divisive as that. They're trying to equate Islam with race, with skin tone. You're not going to fall for that, are you? Their argument will be this: the British are racist. They don't like you because your skin is too dark. Therefore, side with us, whose skin is also dark, but not as dark as yours. They will have noted, even if you haven't. And we can beat the whites, because on your own you'll always be outnumbered by the whites. They will hope that not to be dominated by the white population is the highest aim you have. And they say whites are patronising. Of course, this so-called prize will come at the cost of your own particular culture, your own particular identity, and definitively your own particular individuality. But they'll say that that particular issue can be settled once we are no longer subjugated by white Western society. But if they do succeed in undermining and supplanting the indigenous, easygoing culture of 62 million people, with their current numbers of 3 million, do you really think they are going to leave you to go about your private business of living as you see fit? Do you really think that all the things that you practice culturally as people of colour will be allowed to go on? They'll probably go after the Sikhs first, and then the Hindus, for obvious historical reasons. Once dispatched, because of superior numbers, they'll then come for West Indians and Africans. For Christ's sake, some of these people, some of these nutcases don't even believe in music. You ready to give that up? A constant refrain from Tommy Robinson is how much trouble they're causing with only 3 million people, which is only 5% of the population. Well, with much less in fact, since only a minority of Muslims are the fanatical Islamofascists who are causing all the problems. Imagine, he says, when there's 10 million of them, or 20 million. So, back to Tommy Robinson. You don't have to like him, even if you think he is a racist, which I would urge you to research, since there is plenty of evidence out there of the opposite. You should still be calling for his release. Why? Because he stands for a free society, a society in which a man can speak his mind, a society in which no subject can be off limits and no group beyond criticism. Sometimes that can be tricky. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, and sometimes feelings can get hurt. But they're just feelings. Sticks and stones and all that. Those that would like to stop people from speaking their minds, who limit speech, say that free speech encourages hate speech, whatever that might be. And who defines that? Who defines hate speech? Well, somebody is defining it, because they have made a pretty broad and clumsy attempt at defining it in law. And it goes as follows. A hate crime is any criminal offence, for example, assault or malicious communications, which is perceived to be motivated by hostility or prejudice based on a person's actual or perceived race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, or transgender identity. The key thing here is just how broad it is. A hate crime is any criminal offence which is perceived to be motivated by hostility or prejudice. So the state now thinks that it knows what people's motivations are when saying something. How the fuck can they know that? If that's not thought crime, I don't know what is. The desire to be able to speak one's mind is not code for wanting to start spewing out the N-word all over the place. It really isn't. Oh, I suppose it might be in a vanishingly small number of cases, but who is brave or stupid enough to say that in a public place? Those people normally get their heads kicked in, and rightly so. Free speech is not about racism. It's about being allowed to criticise. Racist speech may come up within that, but it's something we as a society, and more specifically, it has to be said, you need to take on the chin. But judging by the black people I've met, I reckon you're tough enough. Because freedom of speech is the most valuable thing we have in society. How can society ever move forward? How can it ever progress if people are prevented from saying what they think? I've often heard it said, mostly from black people, that racism is covert in this country rather than overt, that it's concealed behind British manners. Is it? Is that true? And if it is, why is that desirable? If somebody is racist, wouldn't you rather know it? Or would you rather that, because nobody is allowed to say racist things, you can never be sure that the person you are talking to isn't racist? Would that be better? The thing about real racists is that they don't care who knows it. Without free speech, you can never know what the other person is thinking. Sometimes even then. You won't be able to tell who your friends are, who your opponents are, and who is your enemy. How can society operate under such restrictions? Of course, we've had a long journey to get where we are. The original restrictions of freedom of speech came in the form of the Race Relations Act, the first one of which was in 1965. But it was a different time then, and black people and Irish people, and dogs for that matter, were discriminated against. Overtly and publicly and humiliatingly. It was necessary then. The common sign in a flat to rent was no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, in order of undesirability. And it was horrible, I imagine. It must always have been horrible to be judged purely for the shade of your skin. Most of us can't imagine that. And I'm aware, painfully aware, that maybe I'm wading into something I shouldn't be getting into. Maybe I'll regret it. Maybe I'm making dangerous assumptions. Maybe I'm not qualified to comment. Maybe it's as simple as I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it is. And I've thought about that. I thought that maybe I shouldn't be doing this video. And I'm anxious about the reaction I might get. But not to do it would just be cowardice. And I'm beginning to run out of that, to be frank. But please take this video in the spirit in which it is intended, which is of someone wanting to help. Someone who wants to live in a free country and who wants my children and yours to live together in peace and in harmony. I always used to live in a multicultural Britain. Now I think that's a bit of a stretch, because we need a culture that brings us all together. But I still definitely believe in a multiracial one. I don't see why we can't have that. I don't believe in an ethno-state. That's almost as much of a nightmare to me as the surveillance-saturated totalitarian state that we are heading for. I don't want to live amongst people who are exactly the same as me. I like a bit of difference, but not so much as to be living amongst people who want to kill me if I don't think as they do. So I was hoping that you might join us in showing that this movement, if you can call it that, is primarily about the rights of free men and women to be able to speak their minds and to declare what is truly in their hearts. I'm not asking for you to be a mask to conceal the true nature of a disgusting white nationalist or white supremacist ideology, but only to acknowledge that in order to be able to respect each other, free citizens must be able to speak their minds. And a good way to demonstrate that is by standing with us against the overmighty state and the vicious, fascistic Islamist ideology that is being allowed to spread its hateful message at the expense of the flawed, but nevertheless admirable free country that we were bequeathed by our parents. A good way is to stand with us and demand the release of one of the most notable exposers of that nasty, mean, spiteful and utterly intolerant ideology. So, as I say, I was hoping that you might find your way to join us and call for the speedy release of Tommy Robinson. I'd really appreciate it.